Welcome to Happily Ever After, the podcast where we talk about life's big stories. From breakups and breakdowns to icky secrets and happy endings, it's the stuff that makes us human. I'm your host, Hannah Harvey. I'm a writer and a parenting blogger at mumsdays.com. That's mumsdays.com. I'd be really grateful if you could subscribe and leave a review because it basically means more people can find the podcast. And I also really love hearing from you, so please do contact me through Instagram at mumsdays with any of your stories really and you know how you relate to the episode or even questions that you may want answering. You can find all the details from this episode in the show notes. Hello and welcome to Happily Ever After with me, Hannah, and today I'm joined by Katie.
Hello.
Hiya, Katie. So Katie helps me with podcasty things and with my socials, and she's often a guest on here. So there are many, many episodes where you can listen back to me and Katie chatting about stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of different things.
Mm-hmm. So when I said to Katie, let's have a little chat today, please tell the audience the title you suggested.
I can't remember what it was now. So it's four ways that I've made friends as a sober woman in her 40s. Is that what I said?
That was it. And what was my reaction, Katie?
Well, yeah, and you were like, oh, that sounds really boring. But the only thing that had varied from the title that you'd suggested was the fact that I added in the word sober, which is interesting because I don't think you're boring because you're sober.
So when I was thinking through earlier about what my points are, if I were to have 4 points about making friends in your 40s as a sober woman, I was like, oh, well, number one has to be that you accept who you actually are.
Yes, good.
Because,
and it's okay to still be working on that, you know?
Yeah. But I was like, holy shit, I'm in my 40s. And I'm sober and I've got kids and I'm single. And my immediate reaction is like, oh my God, when did that happen? And I think probably my perception of that when I was growing up was like, that's really old. And there's no way I'm ever going to be sober. So, yeah, it was like lots of different things coming in there that I'm like, oh my God, is that who I am now? As if that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I know, and it's like not at all. Like nobody else sees it as that, I'm sure. Although I can understand that you've got like hang-ups about whether you're still interesting, even though that you don't drink. You've talked about that before, you know?
Yes. So when I talk about when I first wanted to quit drinking, one of the big reasons I didn't want to is because I thought it would make me really boring and I'd have no friends. When actually I'd say probably the opposite is true. Not that I have loads of friends, but just that I don't think I'm actually that boring. And but it still niggles. It's still in there, that little, because it's all like brain connections, isn't it, going on all the time. And that brain connection is strong and it's still there and it's still telling me, oh, you're a bit boring because you don't drink.
Yeah, it's interesting what's going on in the background that we don't realize, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was chatting to somebody else about it. I sent a link to a new one of my dipping friends saying, look what Katie suggested we do. How boring do I sound? And he was like, you don't. And he said something like 10% of what our brains compute is reality. And the other 90% is all just made up shit that our brain is telling us. So, you know, we'll all have our own perceptions about what we think we should be or what other people think about us. And actually, they're completely different.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people probably aren't even thinking about us. They're like, do what you want to do because I'm too busy worrying about this other thing. And yeah, when they do think of us, they don't necessarily think the things that we think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think,
It's really easy to get wrapped up in your own narrative in your head, isn't it?
yeah, it's kind of silly. And I think really, so number one in all of this is just accept who you are now. And I think part of it for me that is helpful is that the way I am making friends is by just showing up. So one of the big ones for me is showing up online. It may surprise you to know I'm not inundated with like thousands of messages and new friends, but the ones who are connecting with me because they get what I'm talking about and where I'm coming from, and they're interested, and yeah. And if I wasn't sharing, I wouldn't be having those connections with those people,
Absolutely.
including old friends.
Oh, right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
been reaching out.
yeah, like literally yesterday, somebody I haven't seen since I lived in Singapore when I was 21 messaged me and was like, "Oh, I hope I bump into you in the North Sea sometime soon." And I'm like, "Well, let's make it happen."
Well, how nice.
Isn't that
Love
funny? Yeah, so I think so long as you keep, because I think social media is a weird one, isn't it? Like, we don't want to, there's part of you that's like, I don't want to be on it at all. But then there's so much good that can come from it when you do just show up and talk about what you're doing in an honest and authentic way, not in a look how fabulous my life is all the time, because that's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But
Well, no,
then,
it only takes one person to make a connection to you from everything that you've put out, and then it's worth it, doesn't it? You know?
yeah, I really think so. So I think being who you are and being authentic in it is the key. And there will be people that look at stuff and, yeah, I had I love her. This lady at Ruben's school came running up to me and she was like, "Oh, here's Hannah. All she does is stay on the beach all day." And I was like, yeah. So some stuff will come across as like, you don't do anything else other than what you've put online. And my brother said, your life looks like an Instagram filter. And I was like, well, I don't use filters. So
Well, and also you're not going to be posting like pictures of you putting the kids' shoes on and like brushing your teeth and like
we have
making dinner.
totally done that in the past, Katie.
We have actually done that. I couldn't think of anything that we hadn't done. But my point is, you don't post the boring stuff, do you?
You don't post boring stuff, but you can post oh, I've been struggling with this thing stuff. And however much you share or not is totally up to you. But I just think being honest, sharing your story is one of the best ways to connect with people and make new friends. There's your quote for the reel.
Yeah, I like it. Good.
You're welcome. So my next one is it's to do with, I guess, like the biggest, because I think over the last 6 months, this is the most I've ever tried to do lots of new different things and to actively find new friends. So what I've been trying to do is align the new things that I'm doing with positive changes in my life. So like wanting to get fit. I'm wearing my wellness journey t-shirt today because so I went on this retreat in April, and two parts of me was like, oh, I really feel guilty for having this time off, but the other part of me was like, A, I've just turned 40, this is a birthday present to myself. B, I really want to get fit. C, I'll be meeting a whole bunch of new people. D, I'll be getting a banging tan. E, I'll be going with Josie, who I love. Can I think of an F?
Is there an F?
I think F is just doing something out of your comfort zone and being like, even though I don't know these other people, I'm going to trust that it's going to be okay and that I will be able to keep up. Because I was worried it's like a big fitness camp and I'm not that fit and everybody would be, doing burpees at breakfast, which they were, but, I was able to do it too. So things like that where you're like, I will align what I'm going to do. It might be slightly out of my comfort zone, but it's things that I want to get better at. and yeah, not letting it put me off that I'm maybe not as good as everybody else. And I know
Yeah.
Leanne, who came on the trip, was in a similar boat to me. So she'd heard Josie on the podcast and was like, oh, I think I'll go with them. From down south, didn't know anybody, and then just turned up, you know, with a whole bunch of Geordies in Spain.
Good on her.
Yeah, now got a whole bunch of new friends that she can come visit.
Yeah. And it kind of comes back to that, not worrying too much about what other people think of you, because they're actually too busy worrying about what you think of them. Like
Yeah.
you can go on a trip with strangers because everybody's going to be nervous in that same way, aren't they?
Yes. And doing that kind of immersive experience has meant that I've met some like wonderful friends. So I've already introduced Jo on the podcast. She was on the podcast a little while ago. And just keepers, you know, people that you know you're going to keep in touch with because you just had such a great time.
Yeah.
And if I'd succumbed to that whole thing of like, oh, I shouldn't be going, I would have missed out on all that.
I know. I'm pleased you didn't.
Thank you, Katie. And the other thing about aligning with your interests is don't rule things out as well. So you might be like, oh, that is definitely not my cup of tea. So quite a few of my friends, about 3 or 4 people had said to me, you need to do Dip Club. Because at the time I was talking about
me, I think.
Yes, yourself included. And I was like, oh, I want to hang out with more sober people just to see. I don't know why. Because, yeah, part of me is like, but we'll all be boring together. I'm like, I've got to move away from that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was like, okay, love the idea of meeting sober people. Do not love the idea of getting in the North Sea. What happened next, Katie?
I know. Yeah, well, how many days have you been in a row now?
I think today was 87, and I went in at 5 a.m. to watch the sunrise, and it was unreal.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. It doesn't surprise me that you loved it. It's like totally your sort of thing. I don't know why you were so against it for so long.
I do not know either. When I was a kid, I was in the water all the time, and then just completely stopped. But you know what else it makes me think of is the fact that this year was the year of play.
Yes.
Do you remember? So maybe inadvertently I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll just give it a go and we'll do it in the name of play.
Yeah, totally. And like that does open you up to new opportunities, doesn't it? Because everything's just having a go.
Yeah. But it's daunting.
Yeah, of course it is.
Like, that is not your cup of tea, is it? To go to a big club like that on your own.
I would say, yeah. But I would probably do it.
Would you?
Don't know. I'd have to be feeling
like,
really.
Would you? Because I've not seen you go.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, if I was in the mood to make some new friends, then yeah, I would. I'd get myself to go. I would. And like, you can push yourself to do things that are outside of your comfort zone. It's good to do that sort of thing. And because I'm sure if I went, I would not regret it.
Yes. Well, you know that because you love getting in the sea. But yeah, it was. So my next one is to pick your group activity based on your personality.
Yeah.
And also the size. So I loved going to Dip Club, but I literally was like, oh my God, I don't know anybody. And everybody's already in groups. They all know each other. So the first time I arrived, I literally just made a beeline for the people that run it and just sort of stood awkwardly next to them.
That's what I would have done.
That someone talks to me.
Yeah, but they do. So like, I think part of this is having faith in like human kindness. You know, like you can, especially in the north, you can chat, you can make a conversation with anybody. You know, you don't necessarily have to be some outgoing personality to do things like that. Like it's okay to just stand awkwardly next to the organizers for a bit. That's okay.
I'm just gonna stand here and keep standing here. But the other good thing about the whole being on Instagram thing is that once you've been a few times, you then start seeing all the regulars and talking to them. So
Mhm.
even though it is a big group, I have made some really lovely friends through Dip Club.
Mhm.
And that's often like actually behind the scenes. So when you get home, people have seen me dipping and been chatting to me and the other way around.
Mhm.
So yeah, you just have to sort of be a bit brave and show up, I think, but also
Mm.
be mindful that there are options. So the
Yeah.
club that I've actually started going to a lot more, because the last time I went to Dip Club, I was like, the waves were massive. There was like 1,000 people there, and I just felt really anxious and
Mm.
overwhelmed. So I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure I can actually handle all this human energy combined with water energy.
Mhm.
Um, and I've now found a smaller group who I feel like you can connect more on one-to-one basis, which is my favorite.
Yeah, and I guess had you not gone to the first one, you wouldn't have like found alternatives and worked
Oh
out what
yeah.
was good for you, you know?
Hmm.
So I guess it is a bit about experimentation, isn't it?
Yeah,
And what's the
exactly.
worst that can happen? You know, you turn up and go, I don't like it here, and then you leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
But at least you've had your walk and you've been in the sea and, well,
Yeah, you
assuming that's
tried it.
your thing. It was funny
Mm.
the other day when I was down there, I was like, there was all of us coming up from the beach in our dry robes looking like drowned rats. And then there was another big group of people all like in running gear. And I was like, oh, it's like we're different elements. Like
Yeah.
we're the water elements coming up, and then here are the fire elements ready to go and do their running around above land.
Mhm.
And then we'll see somebody else floating off, I don't know, on air or whatever. But like you do, but I don't know what that was. Mind people. Mind
Mind
people.
people.
I would
Mm.
say like writers and writing groups would be the air
Yeah,
elements.
okay, I'm with you. I'm back in the
You
room.
back
I
in
understand
the room.
what I'm talking
The air
about.
elements. And you do things like bookbinding.
Yeah, so like that's the other thing. Like sometimes you don't even have to leave the house to be part of a community like this. Like,
Hmm.
um, so bookbinding I do have to leave the house for, but that's a community of completely different people who don't do anything physical. It's all just about like craft and like
Yeah.
making things with your hands. But then like I've also made friends from just doing stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
Um, and that doesn't require you to even leave the house. That's all just about putting yourself out there, you know,
Yeah,
and going, oh,
exactly.
I'm here.
Yeah, like meeting Penny. Like, hopefully she's going to come on the podcast soon. But we'd kind of we. I knew her as a blogger. Like, she was one of the big mummy bloggers when I started, and I was like, oh, Penny. And then, yeah, we just seemed to realign when I started talking about divorce again, and we've ended up having virtually the same divorce process, including
Mm.
the way that we've chosen to heal. But I'd never met her in person, but we were always just kind of connecting online. And then I actually met her IRL last week.
Yeah.
We couldn't
And
talk because I took my kids and it was like really tricky, but it was nice to physically see her.
yeah. Yeah, it's lovely that you can get connection. Obviously, you've got to be careful, but that you can make that sort of connection just by putting yourself out there on the internet, you know?
Yeah, like pick and choose what you share. Make sure you've
Yeah.
processed it first, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you know the other thing I do a lot of?
Mm.
When I'm out walking, I talk to strangers a lot.
Yeah.
Like I
Hmm.
just really like bumping into people and I don't know, like you couldn't plan it kind of thing, but just if something's happening, you're like, oh,
Hmm.
chatting to
It's
somebody rather
one of
than ignoring them and carrying on.
yeah, it's one of the things that I like about my job, just like the small talk, like finding out that like, you know, somebody's grandson has been born today and like
Oh,
I don't know, it's somebody else's best friend's birthday and like just the little nice bits of people's lives that you get to find out when you work in like a customer facing role is really nice.
yeah, there's an energy that comes with that, which you're like, oh, I'll have some of that, thank you.
Yeah.
The meet cute.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Get to
So,
share that little slice of happiness with them.
yeah, definitely. Well, one of my new, like, really good friends who I dip with every week now, we got chatting about a bin fire, which just bumped into. I was like, "Is that a bin on fire?" And she was walking from the other direction, and she's like, "Yeah." She said, the fire brigade have been called, and so we sort of like hung around and then got chatting and discovered that she likes going in the sea as well. And I was like, let's switch numbers, and now we're getting in the sea like every week together.
Yeah, there's nothing like a bit of disaster to make friends. Not that I'm suggesting that you start fires in order to
No.
make friends, but they are a
Just
good place to hang out.
seek opportunities in the
In
crazy.
big fires.
Because it was like, a really beautiful day. You have the church spire at the end of Long Sands at Tynemouth, and it was all really picturesque. And there's this massive bin fire.
Yeah,
It's like, oh
yeah.
God. But yeah, I think there's opportunities everywhere.
Yes.
For making like little connections with people and just being open and like, I don't know, just it goes back to the first one, just showing up as you are. Like, I am the kind of person that is going to talk to you about a bin fire.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. And I finally have stopped caring what the person I'm speaking to about really thinks, for the most part. I assume that they're happy to speak to me and I'm brightening their day.
They'll soon let you know if they're not happy to speak to you.
Oh yes, they will. So my last idea, my number 4 of how to make friends in your 40s as a sober woman, is that right? Is to organise your own fun.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking things like, obviously I'm doing my yoga classes and basically badgering everyone and anyone to just come and join in. Like, are you a bit lonely? Come and hang out with us.
Yeah.
Do you need to unwind at the end of a busy week? Come do
Here
it
we
with
are.
us. Yeah. And then we might get in the sea, so bring your swimming costume. And people are like, no, thank you. Some people are up for it. So yeah, and I'm just thinking about, so Craig, who runs the dip club that I've been going in, sorry, I'll start that again. My 5 a.m. sunrise dip club has been organised by this guy called Craig, who I'm going to have on the podcast soon. But his story is he got into cold water therapy as a way to handle his gambling addiction. And he was starting to do lots of positive things, like running more and doing the cold water dipping and things like that, and wanted to share that with his like gambling group. So it's like a core of them, and then they've all just spreading the word and that kind of thing. And it's just such a lovely inclusive group.
Yeah.
So it's nice, if I'm just thinking along the lines of, if you're a little group of say 3 or 4, to be mindful of maybe opening it up to other people, so it's a bit more inclusive. You might get the odd weirdo, but that's all right. I love a weirdo.
Yeah, we do. I would describe us as weirdos, perhaps.
Well, that's why I love them.
Might end up with one of us at your group.
Open it up to us. We'll come.
I've always been an organizer, and so like you'd be surprised. And so I've often organised things that are open to whoever coming, and you'd be surprised how receptive people are to coming to something if you've put it together.
Yeah. It's a little bit like I have the fear when I do stuff like that I'll put it out there and I'll get completely ignored. But I don't think
people are normally up for things, provided like it's you talking to the right people about it, and they are up for it.
Yeah, and remembering to keep talking about it, because people need to see something like 7 or 8 times in order to actually act and do. So yes, how was that?
Good. Yes, I feel fully clued up on how to make friends in my 40s now.
As a sober woman.
As a sober woman, yeah.
Do you have any to add?
I mean, like, we've kind of covered the way that I make friends. It's funny because I have a slightly different perspective on all of this, in that like the last thing that I want to do at the minute is make more friends that I've got to keep up with. Like I just don't feel like I've got the physical or mental capacity to like take on more friendships at the minute, which I think a lot of people will sympathize with, you know.
Yeah.
But I have definitely been in the space where I wanted to make friends and do more things before. And like, I honestly just think it's about putting yourself out there, whether that's on the internet, joining things, like going to clubs, speaking to people. Like, if you build it, they will come. You know, it's not the saying. You know.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It feels right.
Yeah, if you put yourself out there, then I think you can make friends. It's totally doable.
Totally doable. On an aside note, a friend of mine who because this isn't just for like single people with no else going on.
No.
This is like a friend of mine's married. She's got kids, but she was looking for new friends, and she tried out Bumble Friends.
Yes, that's interesting. I've always wanted to see how they worked because, like, and actually, I had a friend that went on one, like a Bumble friend date, and found it to be too intense at the end.
Yeah,
But I think that just depends on who you meet.
I think that has been the issue. It's a bit like one on one, like you are literally dating. Like I'd rather do a group setting personally and see who you gel with. Like give it a few weeks and then see who you like. Oh, they seem my cup of tea.
Yeah, but if anybody's out there listening and you've been on Bumble Friends and you've had an experience of it, then we'd love to hear from you because I'm fascinated by that.
And if you want to join our weird club, you just DM us anytime.
Welcome to the club.
Well, thanks for that, love.
Yeah, thank you.
See you next time.
See you later.
All right, then. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again next time for another episode of Happily Ever After with me, Hannah. It would be amazing if you could leave a review and subscribe. And of course, if you've got a friend who might enjoy this episode, please do pass it on. For anything else, you can get in touch with me through Instagram at mumsdays or by my website, mumsdays.com. And did you know that I've got a newsletter? So it's the best way to stay in touch and to make sure you don't miss any podcasts or any freebies or competitions that we're running. And again, you can sign up to that through the website.